And if it comes down to you or me, choose me.
Drizella reunites with Anastasia, and was the witch killer just revealed? Let's break down Season 7, Episode 15 of Once Upon a Time right here on What Happened. What's going on, Oncers? Lisa here, and we are getting closer to the end of the series, and it seems like some characters are starting to get their happy endings. In this episode, we see what looks like Drizella and Anastasia getting their happy ending as they head to another realm, which makes me really happy, but also really sad, because, you know what? I think it seems like Drizella's turned over a new leaf, she's gotten some redemption, she gets her happy ending. That's why it's happy, but it's sad because she became my favorite new character of this season, and I don't want her to leave just yet. So I have my fingers crossed that somehow she's going to come back before the finale or for the finale. I also still don't know whether we can fully trust Dr. Facilier, and I also knew there was always something kind of a little off about Nick. So let's break down this episode. So our new Enchanted Forest storyline has to deal with Drizella and the evil Gothel. So we see Drizella and Anastasia as kids playing hide and seek, but when Drizella can't find Anastasia, she really starts to panic until she sees the good old lantern in the sky, leading her back to Anastasia. And yep, we get that if you see the lantern, it will always help you find a way home type scenario. Flash forward to when they're teenagers and Anastasia's still asleep and Drizella is nice and bitter and ready to figure out how to cast her dark curse. Well, all of a sudden Regina walks in and tells Drizella to give up the curse and she'll help her turn her life around, but Drizella does not want to make that deal. And well, what do you know, no shocker here, it wasn't actually Regina anyway. It turns out it was tricky Mother Gothel putting Drizella to the test by gauging her commitment to her dark plan. Gothel then tells Drizzy she has a circle of sisters that have the most powerful magic in the realm, and she invites Drizella to join them. Needing magic obviously to help her with the dark curse, she goes to see Gothel, and basically Gothel's holding a Hunger Games-esque competition because she says there's 2 spots left in the coven and she has all these recruits. The recruits must search the forest for 2 golden flowers and they're supposed to work alone, and it seems like things will be getting cutthroat. Drizella thought she'd be joining some kind of sisterhood, so she hears this and is like, so much for sisterhood, which of course sisterhood is the theme of the episode as well as the title. On her search for the flowers, Drizella ends up joining up with another young woman who loves her lollipops. Yep, it's Gretel from Hansel and Gretel. Gretel tells Drizella the story of her and her brother and how her brother Hansel is pretty messed up by the witch that tried to cook them in her gingerbread house and all of this, and he has burns on his arm and is traveling around under another name. They basically bond over their journeys and their siblings, and then Drizella trips a wire and they're both able to stop a trap before being clobbered. I honestly wish I kind of had Gretel's power, like she was able to turn that big old log or whatever it was that was flying towards them into gumdrops. Like, I feel like that's every kid's dream. Maybe not gumdrops, but to, make things turn into candy when you want it. The two end up splitting up and Drizella is approached by Gothel, who says she's there to help Drizella win. There's actually only 1 spot, no flowers, and the real test has now started. She hands Drizella a sigh, and I was hoping Raphael, would appear, but he didn't, because I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that's what that weapon reminds me of. But moving on, Drizella's task is now to kill Gretel. Gothel disappears and Drizella meets back up with Gretel and tries to tell, Gretel maybe they should work together against Gothel. Turns out Gretel is also wielding a sai because Gothel came to her as well, and now it's a fight. Gretel is ruthless and goes for it, but ultimately Drizella comes out the victor by literally stabbing Gretel in the back to protect herself. Gothel congratulates Drizella, and we basically learn that when it comes to kill or be killed, Drizella will kill, even though you can see she has pretty much a tough time with it. She ends up choosing herself, which we also see echoed in Hyperion Heights, so let's move over there. Before getting to Drizella's Hyperion Heights storyline, let's see what everyone else is up to. Rogers is working hard on the Candy Killer case as it's been dubbed, but Rumpel tells him to take a break from it because, as Belle told him once, wandering another path often brings us where we need to go. We see that Rumpel is working on gluing his teacup back together, so he's not quite worried about the Candy Killer case at the moment. He's also trying to get a new perspective on things. Meanwhile, Jacinda and Lucy show up at Ronnie's to pick up a to-go order, and Lucy is of course still worrying about Henry and Henry being alone, and Regina and Lucy decide to put Operation Bromance into effect to help get Henry's mind off Jacinda. So they plan for Henry to get together with his 2 best guy friends, Rogers and Nick. Lucy's plan works, and we see Henry playing Galaga at Flynn's Barcade, which is a nice shout out for all you Tron fans, but I also feel like I could pull a tiny bit of double duty as a shout out to Flynn Rider. But of course, it's more of Tron and Flynn's Arcade. Rogers and Nick both show up, and the guys have their boys' night out, and of course, Henry talks about his failed attempts at wooing Jacinda. He ends up deciding just to ask out the next woman who walks into the bar, and well, what do you know? No surprise, it's Jacinda, of course. So now, These two think that the universe is just pulling them together and it must be fate, and that maybe Lucy is right about everything. Jacinda's still a little skeptical though and wants to test this fate, so she tells Henry that if he can make this impossible shot of flinging a token across the table into a mug, then everything they've been talking about, like the fairy tales and destiny, is real. Well, when Henry goes to take that shot, it looks like that shot is about to go in, but someone moves the mug before it lands, and yeah, Henry's defeated. Jacinda ends up leaving to go meet with Sabine for dinner, and Henry has to go back to his guys and whine some more. However, when Jacinda returns home, she still has the barcade token and she's playing with it and she's thinking a lot, and she decides, hey, let's test this fate out myself. So she tries an impossible shot in her own living room, and what do you know? She sinks it, and now maybe she's starting to believe. While Jacinda and Henry were playing their fate game in the barcade, Nick was talking to Rogers about his case. Oddly enough, he knows it's called the Candy Killer case, which I'm going to assume Nick only knows from maybe Rogers talking about it at the bar, which we didn't get to see. Rogers says he has no leads, and Nick makes a comment about how he's not really into sweets. Well, as they're leaving the barcade for the night, Nick has a flat tire and he tells Rogers and Henry he's gonna be fine, and he drops some hints to Rogers and Henry about the case and love life of Henry. We then see Nick fix his tire, and when he goes to open his trunk, we see that inside of it are boxes of chocolates that look oddly familiar, as well as this creepy baby type mask, and he has a disco ball on his keychain. Now I know I haven't talked yet about Drizella's attack by the Candy Killer, but basically this points to Nick being this Candy Killer. It also makes me think that somehow Nick, whose fairy tale equivalent is supposedly Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, isn't exactly who he says he is. He's gotta be Hansel, right? I mean, he doesn't like sweets, which I'm guessing is because of, PTSD from the whole gingerbread witch candy baking thing, trying to kill him. And the killer is after witches, which I'm guessing is part of Nick's vengeance plan, not only on the witches, but also maybe because of the coven of witches being responsible for his sister's death. Now, I don't think we ever got to see Nick in short sleeves yet, so we can't confirm if he has any burn marks on his arms, but my guess is he's actually Hansel, because obviously we heard Gretel also say that her brother is wandering around messed up from this whole incident, going by another name. So that's my thinking on this whole Nick, Jack, Hansel thing. Now let's move on to our girl Drizella to see where this Candy Killer attack comes into play. Drizella's still trying to find Anastasia, and there's been no progress. Gothel, of course, then shows up wanting to renew a deal with Drizella, but Drizella knows that Gothel just wants Anastasia's powers as his guardian, so Gothel can get to the dagger. Gothel decides to then use some leverage to make Drizella work for her. She found a bag in the lobby addressed to Ivy, aka Drizella, and inside that is a familiar box of chocolates that we've seen left for the other victims of the killer. Gothel leaves, and when Drizella goes into the parking garage, she's attacked by her so-called Candy Killer in this creepy baby Happy Death Day-ish mask, and there is a good fight, but Drizella ends up kicking some butt because she's prepared with her pepper spray and she knows how to use a stiletto as a weapon and manages to get away. She's now extremely shaken up and goes to Ronnie's, and Regina offers to help, but Drizella brings her a cure for Henry's poisoned heart. Drizella has no cure for that, and she's really genuinely scared, and it seems like Regina starts to, feel for her a little and says that she'll call Rumple for help because, well, classic Regina.
You're safe here. Trust me. If anyone's gonna have the pleasure of killing you, it's gonna be me.
Dr. Facilier ends up sitting down with Drizella, and nothing good's gonna come from this. He shows her her cards for her future, and of course he wants to make a deal. He says Regina only cares about fixing Henry, and since Drizella can't do that, he's the only one who can actually help her, and he pulls out a magic bean, which, well, needs a little bit of magic to work, but it'll help Drizella escape to another realm. So what's the catch? He needs Anastasia, of course, and says her death will pay for Drizella's safety. Otherwise, Anastasia's gonna end up somehow being used by Gothel. He then gives Drizella a hint as to how to find Anastasia. Now, they're not the only ones trying to find Anastasia. Rumple is also trying to find her, and he ends up in an abandoned restaurant, which is the last place Anastasia was picked up on the security cameras. Regina shows up to inform Rumple about Drizella and how they saw Drizella leave with Facilier, so they know something's going on. Rumple does know about Facilier's desire for the dagger, which he's a little upset about Regina lying to him about or not telling him, and he knows that if Facilier succeeds, that Rumple won't get back to Belle, so the two set out to find Anastasia before Drizella. Unfortunately, they don't succeed, and Drizella lights up some lanterns, gets Anastasia to come out of hiding and of course tricks her because Drizella doesn't want to die, and if it's between the two of them, she chooses herself. She magically puts Anastasia to sleep and takes her back to the towers where Facilier starts his ritual to take Anastasia's magic. The building then starts to shake before Facilier can, cut open Anastasia, and Gothel appears and reveals that she's the one waking up Anastasia. Anastasia then wakes up and she is not happy, and kind of reminds me of like the scene from Carrie when Carrie gets really angry, but Anastasia is not happy. Tables are breaking, things are flying around. It seems like it's going to be chaos. Gothel is now feeding things to Anastasia about how awful Drizella is, and then Drizella starts telling Anastasia why she shouldn't help Gothel and apologizing for things, and then Drizella starts telling Anastasia why she shouldn't help Gothel, and she apologizes and tells Anastasia that basically she should do what she needs, even if that means killing Drizella, because Drizella's finally done letting Gothel control her fate. It seems like Anastasia has seen the good in Drizella and accepts her apology, and she goes against Gothel and hugs Drizella, and the two make amends. Rumpel and Regina then show up, and Facilier and Gothel are both gone, and it's just Anastasia and Drizella. Drizella apologizes for everything and tells Regina how she's learned that family actually helps create the strongest magic. It doesn't weaken it like she always thought. Drizella knows that she has to go and asks Regina for her forgiveness.
Let's just say I understand you. My gift to you is what I always wanted. Someone to believe I can change.
Anastasia then uses her magic to activate the bean, and she and Drizella go hand in hand through the portal to another realm to live their happy ever after, I'm guessing. Now, Regina is actually surprised that Rumpel let Anastasia the Guardian go, and Rumpel says that when he does good, it actually brings him a bit closer to Belle, so he has to believe another Guardian will appear one day, and to see two sisters going off together, that means that today was a good day for everyone. And you know what? I love this softer side of Rumpel. Regina then returns to Ronnie's, and of course Facilier is sitting there waiting for her, and he tries to explain himself to her and how he wasn't actually, after the dagger per se, he wasn't gonna kill Anastasia. He just wanted some magic for her, and he happened to get some, and he has it in a flask, and it was supposed to always be used as the gift, which was the intention. So who was that gift for? Well, it was for Regina, so she could find a way to save Henry, and he says there's no price for it. And you can actually see how touched Regina is by this action. Now here's the thing. I really want to believe Facilier is telling the truth because I do think he does actually care for Regina. But part of me is like, you can't trust this guy, it can't be this easy, and that can't be the only reason Facilier came to town. This has to be to throw her off somehow from whatever he's really doing. Well, I know I'm not the only one who doesn't trust Facilier. Rumpel doesn't either, and he finds Facilier outside and gives Facilier a good talking to and threatens him because no one comes between Rumpel and his family and reuniting with Belle. And well, that wraps up this week's episode of Once Upon a Time. And you know what? I thought this was actually a fun episode, and I really loved seeing Flynn's Barcade, that whole set, and I wish that was real and I could go to it. And I just love Drizella's arc, and Adelaide Kane, she is so good at playing Drizella and the whole, start from evil to redemption. And I don't want to say goodbye to Drizella, but it looks like that's what's gonna happen. Maybe Drizella will do some major thinking in whatever realm she went to, realize Anastasia's safe and she can come back and fix things, and maybe team up with Regina to take down Gothel. That's what I have my fingers crossed for. For now, though, let's watch the promo for the next episode.
You want to break this curse as much as I do.
You have no idea. I came here to find my story, and I refuse to believe that I'm just a character in someone else's.
Turns out this killer is a huge fan of your work. Tell me where the truth lies.
I don't have any answers. I don't have the secret codes to these stories because it turns out I don't even understand them.
I need to go see Jacinda. Tell her how I feel.
Hop in. Let's go get you everything you deserve.
All right, y'all. Nick, that boy is a creep. He's now going directly after Henry, and he is either going to kill Henry or maybe just push Henry to kiss Jacinda and kill him that way. How many grudges does this guy really have? He definitely gave hints, obviously, to Rogers and Henry in this episode about who he was, because he told Rogers the answer to his case is right under his nose, which is literally him. And, Nick also told Henry to follow the signs about Jacinda, which means he definitely wants Henry to go after Jacinda and kiss her. This guy's getting evil. So, do y'all think that Nick is indeed Hansel, or is he just a guy with a lot of grudges and a vendetta? Is Facilier telling the truth about not being after the dagger and just wanting to help Regina? Also, what do you think Sabine and Drew are even up to, because we don't have them in this episode? Sound off in the comments with all your thoughts, then you can click right over here for my recap of Rise, and be sure to subscribe if you like what you see. If you don't, that's cool too. My name's Lisa, thanks for hanging out, I'll see you guys again soon.